Today, we are cracking open an ancient text that, honestly, reads less like a sermon and more like a high-stakes intellectual showdown. It's really a masterclass in debate, where one person has to face down three different waves of opponents, and every single one of them has a question that's designed to be an inescapable trap.
And that's the real heart of it, isn't it? How do you play the game when the whole thing is rigged? The people asking these questions, they're not looking for answers. They're setting up a rhetorical gauntlet. Every single question is bait, and it's designed to force an answer that will either make the speaker look like a fool to the people or get him arrested by the authorities. This is a battle for survival, and it's being fought entirely with words.
So let's set the scene. We're in the temple courts in Jerusalem. This is the center of public and religious life. Jesus is teaching, and right away, he gets confronted by the heavy hitters. We're talking the chief priests, the top legal experts, and the elders, and they do not waste any time.
Wow! Talk about direct. This is not some subtle theological debate. It's a straight-up public challenge to his very legitimacy. They're basically shouting, "Who do you think you are?" And think about it. If he says, "God gave me this authority," he sounds like a blasphemer. If he says, "I have it on my own," he sounds arrogant. It's a perfect trap. But he doesn't fall for it, not even for a second. Instead of trying to defend himself, he completely flips the script on them. It's this classic rhetorical move where you shift the burden of proof. He responds to their hostile question by asking them an even more difficult one about a well-known prophet named John.
And just like that, he puts them in an impossible position. A perfect dilemma. Okay, so if they say John's authority came from God, Jesus is just going to turn around and ask, well then why didn't you believe him? Which would expose them as hypocrites. But if they say John's authority was just human, they're at risk of starting a riot, because the people absolutely loved John. They believed he was a true prophet. They are completely and utterly stuck.
Their only way out is to admit defeat. By saying, "We don't know," they basically give up their role as the spiritual guides of the people. I mean, they can't even answer a basic religious question in public. And this gives Jesus the perfect out to dismiss their original challenge. He pretty much says, "If you can't answer my question, then I'm not answering yours. Round one is over."
But he doesn't just stop there. He doesn't just let the moment pass. He immediately launches into a story, a parable. And this is his way of actually answering their question about authority, but he does it indirectly. He forces them to see the answer for themselves.
So he tells this story about a vineyard owner who clearly represents God and some tenant farmers who represent the religious leaders. The owner sends his servants, the prophets, to collect what's rightfully his. But the tenants, they beat the servants again and again. So finally, the owner sends his own son, thinking surely they'll respect him. But the tenants, in their greed, they see their chance. They decide to kill the heir so they can steal the inheritance for themselves.
And he finishes the story with this powerhouse quote from their own scriptures. The message is just devastatingly clear. The tenants in the story are the very leaders challenging him. The son is him. And the text tells us they knew right away that this story was aimed directly at them. He didn't just escape their trap. He used it to publicly judge their entire leadership.
Okay, so the first challengers are completely silenced. But now a new group steps up, and this time the trap is way more dangerous. They send in spies who pretend to be sincere followers. Their only goal? To trick him into saying something that would give them an excuse to hand him over to the Roman governor.
This is just pure political poison. You have to remember the Jewish people were living under Roman occupation, and they hated it. They especially hated paying taxes to a foreign emperor. So this question is designed to force Jesus to pick a side. Are you with your oppressed people, or are you with Rome?
I mean, the stakes could not be higher. If he says yes, pay the tax, he becomes a collaborator in the eyes of his own people. His credibility is shot. If he says no, don't pay the tax, well, that's treason. That's an open call for rebellion. The spies would have exactly what they need to get him arrested on the spot. It really seems like there's no way out of this one.
His response is probably one of the most famous lines in history. He asks for a coin, he points to Caesar's face stamped on it, and then he delivers this line. It's just absolutely brilliant. He cleverly acknowledges their civic duty, give the coin that belongs to Caesar back to Caesar, but then he immediately pivots to a much, much higher duty, giving to God what belongs to God. He just sidesteps the trap perfectly, leaving the spies completely astonished and with nothing to say.
So, the political trap was a total bust. Now a third group comes forward and tries a completely different angle, a theological trap. This time it's the Sadducees, and they come armed with a riddle that they think is a foolproof way to discredit one of Jesus' core teachings.
Now, to really get their question, you have to understand who these guys were. The Sadducees were this powerful, wealthy group, and they were very literal in their theology. And the most important thing to know about them is that they absolutely did not believe in the resurrection of the dead or any kind of afterlife. So their whole goal here is to make the very idea of resurrection sound ridiculous.
So they come up with this absurd, almost soap opera-like scenario. It's based on a specific law from their scriptures. A woman marries a guy. He dies. So she marries his brother. He dies. This happens a total of 7 times with 7 brothers. Then finally, she dies. So their big gotcha question is, at the resurrection you're always talking about, whose wife is she? It's a question designed to make the whole concept of an afterlife seem like a chaotic, illogical mess.
And once again, he doesn't walk into the trap. He doesn't even try to solve their silly riddle. Instead, he goes straight for the flawed assumption the entire thing is built on. He basically tells them they're wrong because they don't understand the scriptures or the power of God.
He just completely reframes the conversation. He explains that the resurrected life is fundamentally different from this one. Marriage, which is an institution for this world, doesn't even exist in the same way. In that age, people are like the angels. They don't die anymore. By describing a totally different kind of existence, he makes their earthly, legalistic riddle completely irrelevant.
And then he delivers the final blow. He quotes from the book of Moses, a part of the scripture the Sadducees actually revered, and points out that God calls himself the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, long after those men had physically died. And the implication is just crystal clear. If God is still their God, then they must still be alive to him. He uses their own holy text to completely dismantle their core belief.
So at this point, it's over. He has successfully navigated every single trap they threw at him. The legal trap, the political trap, the theological trap. We're told that after this, no one dared to ask him any more questions. And now that he's done defending, he goes on the offensive.
He poses his own riddle, again pulling it straight from their scriptures. Now, everybody at the time agreed that the Messiah would be a descendant of the great King David, his son. But Jesus points to a psalm where King David himself calls this future Messiah, my Lord. So he asks, how can the Messiah be both David's son, which would make him David's inferior, and at the same time be David's Lord, his superior? It's a theological knot that they just can't untie. And that's it. That's the end of the debate. The spies, the leaders, all the challengers, they are rendered completely silent. They came to trap him, and instead they were the ones who got rhetorically and theologically disarmed right in front of everybody.
With all his challengers silenced and his authority on full display, Jesus turns to the crowds and delivers this incredibly sharp, direct warning. He exposes the hypocrisy of the very legal experts who had just tried to trap him, accusing them of loving public attention while secretly exploiting the weakest people in society.
It's really a stunning display of navigating pure hostility with pure intellect. The challenges don't stop because the opponents are satisfied. They stop because they are utterly and completely defeated. And it leaves us with this final, really provocative question. What's the true nature of authority when it can silence every single opponent, not with force, but with absolute, unassailable clarity?